Okay, so officially welcome to the session. And we're going to be talking about surviving in what I'd call the new normal, just surviving or thriving, as I said. Right now, everyone seems to be in survival mode, but I think we need to move beyond survival mode and actually go into thriving. So now, where are we? So yes, everyone's talking about COVID-19, and this is one pandemic that's basically ensured a global shutdown. So stock markets have crashed, businesses have closed. Because of what's happening in China and Russia and everywhere else, oil prices have nosedived, which has impacted different economies. And I mean, it's clear to everyone that everyone around us is panicking. But rather than just panic, I think it's important to know something. And I'll be sharing because why I wanted to restrict is just BTS sisters, because it's going to be, it's spiritual, right? And so we're sharing a few things in the Bible. And what I wanted to start off with is, what I want to start off with is this, is that it says, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Okay, there's nothing new under the sun. Now, with all that's going on now, everyone would think this is the first time in the world that we're experiencing something of this nature. But I think that's more because of the fact that media is more, there's more proliferation of media, mobile devices. But if you go to this, I mean, I hope you can all see it clearly, but what I'm saying here is that this COVID-19 just added an interesting twist to a pre-existing pattern. Now, the slide I have here, I took it from, there was a seminar or a session that the London Business School held looking at the economics in times of COVID-19. So it's an entire policy document. But this slide struck me, and I thought it would be useful to share this. And so I just copied and pasted the slide as it is. It says here, a historical perspective on contagious diseases. So 14th century, we had the bubonic plague, which estimated to have killed about 25 million people. 1918 to 1920, you had the worldwide influenza epidemic, again, 50 million people or higher. 1981, I don't know if anyone remembers that period. It was as though anybody and everybody that was, you know, whether it's a pop star, a musician, an athlete, or an actor, you know, seemed to be dying of AIDS. And if everyone had HIV, just thought automatic death sentence. So that took about us like early 80s. And that took about 25 million lives. And there's still, you know, several million people living with HIV till now. Then since then, there have been recent smaller outbreaks, okay? So you've had the SARS in early 2000s, avian flu 2009, and then most recently, 2014 to 2016 thereabouts, we had to deal with Ebola. Now, remember I said earlier that there's nothing new under the sun. So it's not just this. What is the implication of these, you know, pandemics for us globally? And here's a slide. There is a pattern that I want us to pay attention to. There's a pattern. So in the 14th century, when we had the bubonic plague, shortly after that, there was a banking crisis in Europe. So there are two major financial institutions then in Italy. They crashed, and that impacted everything across Europe. Excuse me. In 1918, 1920s, thereabouts, when they had the worldwide influenza, there was a Great Depression. 1981 to mid-1980s, you know, that's when we had the early 1980s recession. There was Black Monday in 1987 when Wall Street and everything just crashed. When we had SARS, that's around the time there was a dot-com bubble burst. 2009 is when we had, you know, global recession. Okay, so I don't know if you remember the things like the subprime mortgage crisis. There was the energy crisis when, before, if you're an oil-producing country rather, you were, you know, in the big leagues. But that's when, you know, energy prices started to tank. OECD countries were in trouble. You know, Ebola. Then you also saw things like around the time of Ebola. That's the time we saw European sovereign debt crisis. You know, the issues. I remember it was especially with Greece. Greece had issues, you know, paying its bills. Chinese stock market crashed. So 2019 is unfolding. So why am I sharing this? There's an increasing frequency in pandemics and financial crisis, and they go hand in hand. Okay, so anytime there's a pandemic, a financial crisis is around the corner. Either it starts with it or it happens shortly afterwards, and for obvious reasons, because the impact on the economy. But also note this, because of globalization, right, there's been an increase in the spread and the impact of the crisis. So before, remember the 14th century, yeah, the banking crisis was largely around Europe, but increasingly as the world is becoming a more global market now. So like someone said, because China sees the whole world is shaking. So we can't separate the impact of globalization, right? And this, but what I really wanted to bring out here was that, again, there's a pattern. With every pandemic comes a financial crisis. Now, because most of us are in Nigeria, I thought it was important to pay attention to the Nigerian environment. Now, the Nigerian environment, we're looking at what's happening. This starts as at January January, February. Okay, so inflation rate has been going up systematically, right? From July last year. Our foreign reserves have been going down systematically since July last year. Treasury bills are the lowest they've been for a while. Ever since things were quite positive last year, around about this time last year. And in exchange rates have also been going up. Okay, now this is for the Nigerian environment, just showing that what is going on globally. So we can't say, oh yes, America is doing this, China is doing that. It is impacting our economy. And we need to be mindful of the fact that this thing has an impact on our economy. And most of us, I'm sure a number of us are already aware of this stats. So if it's just a refresher, that's fine. But I'm just trying to keep it as broad as possible. Now, here's the thing, and I just saw this and it just made me laugh. So just because the virus is just, this was also funny, try not to put your head in your hand, because it's possible to look at all these things and just think to yourself, you know what, it's all doom and gloom, let's all just go home and shut down. There's no point continuing anything. But that is not the perspective I want us to have, okay? And I'll slow down a little bit now so we can go into things in a bit more detail. This is where I'm coming to now. Now, Genesis 41, 56 to 57. Remember we said there's nothing new under the sun. Now, this is talking about the famine that was all over the face of the earth. And Joseph opened the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. We are familiar with the story where Joseph had the dream. He shared it with Pharaoh, 7 years of lean, 7 years of fat. So we use the 7 years of fat to prepare for the 7 years of lean. But here's the critical thing. It says here, all countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain because the famine was all over. Now, at any crisis that goes on, there are Josephs that are going to emerge, all right? So Joseph had the solution. Joseph knew what to do. Joseph was well positioned and he had the correct posture. And really that's the goal for this seminar, to make sure that we are well positioned and we have the right posture for the impending recession. And it's going to be a global recession. It's not just in Nigeria, it's all over. It's going to happen all over, okay? Now, if we look at the FX market in recent times, now we've seen that recently, about last week, 2 weeks ago, there was an increase in intervention rate at what we call the I&E window. That's investors and exporters window. What is this window? It's basically the window where foreign portfolio investors, those are people who are basically taking positions on foreign exchange and Nigeria's foreign exchange for profit, right? So this window is often a lot more expensive than what you'll get in the retail market. Now, the rates went from 366 to 380. And CBN has also increased the official rate from 306, which we all knew was an artificial rate, to 360, which is what it was really, that was the average rate that we were functioning with anyway. When I say we, in the markets generally. So basically trying to narrow the gap between the official rate and the end user rate. But if you check with anyone in the market, like 2 weeks ago, especially in parallel market, 2 weeks ago, everything just went a little bit crazy, because people were hoarding FX. So you're buying, FX went up to, I'm talking about dollar, and I went about 400, 420, really crazy, but it's calmed down a little bit. But what this tells us is that the days of 350 odd have gone. And ultimately, what CBN is going to do is that they're going to move more to try and harmonize this dual exchange rate. Before, the Nigeria had a problem where we had multiple exchange rates, where exchange rate depended on who you spoke to. There was a CBN rate, there's the I&E window rate, there's the FORMEM rate, there's the FORMQ, there was a rate for everything, and it was all artificial, right? Not market-driven at all. And so what they've done now is sort of narrowed everything down from these multiple rates to just two, basically two rates. And then ultimately what we should see will be a convergence down to a market-driven rate. Now, because that has political implications, I can't say this is when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen, because the CBN governor has said, come hell or high water, he's not going to devalue the Naira, but it's inevitable for it to be done officially. Now, where it's going to rest is open for discussion. I guess we can discuss that later on, but this is just to give everybody perspective as to what's going on right now. Now, here's the thing. It says here, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence and find out knowledge of witty inventions. Remember I said earlier, with every crisis, there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity. And I'm not talking about a capitalist, make life difficult for everybody and, like hoard something so nobody can buy. No, they're actually genuine opportunities, because there are opportunities to create new things, right? And that's where the witty inventions come from. So basically where I'm going with this, that within every pandemic or crisis atmosphere, there's something that always emerges, and that is wealth creation. It is a prime situation, prime environment for wealth creation. And the truth is right now, there is something on God's mind for his people, and we need to prepare. There's a wealth transfer that's going to happen, but it's for those who understand how to position themselves as the Josephs, right? Who will be able to take advantage of it. Otherwise, things will just be flying over people's heads and you're wondering, but I had this idea, why didn't I do anything about it? Here's some things that I wanted to share that's happening in the market as well. So CBN, with all that's been going on with COVID and what have you, so CBN has put in place some policy measures. Again, some of you are bankers, so you're familiar with this, but for the benefit of those who are not. So there's a 3.5 trillion naira policy measure in place. What they've done is for those who have intervention facilities, which means any CBN facility, they've given a moratorium of 1 year. So meaning you have 1 extra year for repayment. They've also provided interest rate reduction on intervention facilities. These facilities before were 9%, now it's 5%, which means if we're positioning for anything before you're going to be paying 9%, now it's going to be 5%. Now they've also created a 50 billion naira target credit facility for affected households and small and medium enterprises. And the whole idea is that because of the cash crunch, some businesses will need additional support, credit support for cash flow. Okay, what they're also giving to some institutions or to banks and regulatory forbearance to restructure terms of facilities, because for those who are bankers, you're aware that CBN has said we have to have a particular ratio, loan deposit ratio, and things like that. But with all that's going on, if our customers are not doing business, then obviously they can't repay, and it affects the books. So they're giving us some forbearance to restructure terms of facilities in the affected sectors. Now, what they've also done to try and manage FX is to direct all companies and all servicing companies to sell FX to the CBN directly rather than go through NNPC. So effectively cutting out the middleman. What CBN is also trying to do, I don't know if you remember the slide I showed earlier in terms of the FX reserve, because the reserves are pretty much in nosediving. They're trying to cut out and remove every possible opportunity for a middleman to come in and make an extra cash, because they need all the money they can get their hands on. And this is the interesting part. So there's an additional 100 billion naira intervention fund in healthcare loans to pharmaceutical companies and healthcare practitioners who want to expand or build capacity. Okay. Now, why this is important is that it's not just for the pharmaceutical companies themselves, because you can say, I don't work with the Glaxo or May and Baker, but it's also going to affect their value chain, right? Because if they're doing more, that means their distributors will do more, their suppliers will do more, which means there should be more business for their own suppliers, their own distributors, who may or may not be using one of your services right now, okay? And what they're also going to do is, they're also talking about identifying a few local pharmaceutical companies, and they've identified them, a few of them, there are 9 of them, who will be granted funding facilities directed to support the procurement of raw materials to boost local drug production. So which means there's going to be a lot more happening locally, ideally. And there's a 1 trillion naira in loans to boost local manufacturing and production across critical sectors. Now, because there's a lot of attention around this pandemic right now, so a lot of things have been, a lot of liquidity is being freed up, a lot of local currency liquidity is being freed up to try and stimulate the economy so that it doesn't crash. But whilst these things are being done, these funds are really, to be very, very honest, very, very frank, there's not going to go widespread. It's just going to go to a few people. If you look at it in terms of the economy as a whole, it's just going to go to a few people. It will have a ripple effect, but it's not going to be, you're not talking about, 20, 30 million people. No, it's just going to be a few hundreds, not even thousands of people that are going to be able to access these facilities. Okay. Now, the next thing I wanted us to do is to pay attention to what I'm calling the new normal. Now, what does it mean? Things have changed, and that's the reality on ground. And so because things have changed, what exactly has changed, and how and why, and what are the opportunities and the things that have changed? Number one is that reduced income, businesses are getting less income. And the truth is, if I'm not selling and I don't have whatever it is I'm selling, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, I'm going to have to make some tough decisions, right, as a business owner. How does that affect me as a business owner? How does it affect us as employees? And what it means is that there are going to be some pay cuts and there are going to be job losses. There's some realities. I know a few people, some close friends who have had to either take reduced salaries or have actually lost their jobs, not because they've done anything wrong, but because the business the businesses we're working with just are literally functioning in a shoestring right now. Okay, so businesses are going in the lean and mean direction. But what does that mean? It means that there are going to be many accidental entrepreneurs that will emerge. The people who are now out of work will now go into some form of business or the other. Now, it's a different thing when you wake up and you say, you know what, I want to run a business, as opposed to now I have no choice. I need to run something because, you know, I just need to survive and put money, get food on the table and take care of my basic needs, right? So what it means is that for the accidental entrepreneur, as they're starting businesses, they're going to need a lot of help, right? And this means that there are going to be a lot of opportunities for outsourced services, you know, for HR, for finance, for taxes, especially taxes, because, you know, the government is really, really clamping down on that as a source of revenue generation. And it's not just in Nigeria, globally. Digital marketing, business planning. So a lot of these accidental entrepreneurs will want to just focus on, let me even find my feet and let somebody else deal with all the extras. So I focus on my core. So gone are the days when, you know, someone's open up a business and they're getting an HR person, a finance person. No, it's going to be lean and mean. And so which means they're going to try as much as possible, number one, to reduce their overheads, which means one thing I didn't put here was workstations as well, for co-working spaces. So maybe for those of you who have property that you haven't decided what to do with, opportunities to develop co-working spaces, opportunities to provide consultancy services, opportunities to provide things like business in a box, you know, the bundle things, and opportunities for collaboration. So if there's someone who understands HR, there's someone that understands finance, there's someone who understands, you know, taxation or what have you, rather than trying to run things individually, can you and your friends come together to put something together, to put a cohesive, like a bouquet in place? Because these opportunities will come up, people will be let go, and they'll need to set up businesses and they'll need help, okay? The next thing is that people are more health and hygiene conscious than ever. So every other person is washing their hands every 5 seconds. Every other person, I can't tell you how many times people have, you know, I've gotten so many, and I'm sure we all have, come and buy hand sanitizer, this, that, and the other. And I've received a few, and that some of them, you just know, this thing is DIY, you know, someone just put methylated spirit and, but they sold it, and it's, you know, it's a business. So what it tells me is that, look, people are a lot more health and hygiene conscious. So people take their health seriously. So if people are looking in areas of fitness, you're looking in the areas of general well-being, if you're looking in the areas of whether it's mental health, physical health, whether it's in food, which I'll still come to that, you know, I see things in terms of multivitamins, you know, everybody just thinking about health, health, health. So now is a good time to start looking at that space. If you've had an idea in that area, it's time to start trying to put things together in there. And there's another thing we must notice, that the basics have become more prominent. When everyone's locked down, no one's talking about doing their hair, doing their nails. It's just basics now. Food, shelter, clothing. And what that tells me is that come what may, no matter what happens, right, these three will always be critical at any point in time in life. Food, shelter, clothing. So where you're working, what business you're doing, whatever it is, does it in some way resonate with one of these three areas in some way, shape, or form? Okay. So it's worth paying attention to that. The next thing I think we should also look at is the fact that because of global travel restrictions, and even locally, you're seeing a few things, you know, interstate restrictions, not just in Nigeria, but in other parts of the world as well. What that means is that there's a demand for the provision of local alternatives. So before, maybe you needed to do it. Now, if you can't fly someone in, how do you make it happen? Is it going to be one remotely digital, like what we're doing now, where we're having an online call? Is it something that one now needs to produce? If you had to import something before, especially as FX is going to be a lot more expensive, you know, what are those things that you're seeing around you that you see require a lot of importation, but you can start putting local alternatives in place? You know, the truth of the matter is that what COVID has shown the entire world is how important China is. So many things that people are struggling to get, they're not getting it because China was manufacturing like 60% of the world's produce. Right? So when China is not supplying, then there's a global shortage. So this is the reality on ground. Now, will China bounce back? Yes, it will, but it will take some time. In the interim, how do you position? Another thing you'll see is that logistics services are a lot more in demand now. Nobody wants to go out for anything. And what happens is that once a pattern has been set, right, it now becomes like I said, the new normal. So people want to be able to, I want to get my food. I want to get this. I want to deliver this. I want to send something to someone. So a lot of smaller courier services are going to be created. And then the question is, even if you're not sending a courier service yourself, are there services you can provide to that courier service? You know, if you're going to run one or if you're going to partner with one. And let's note this, everything needs a digital element. whether it's education. I mean, for those who have kids, you know that your kids are now at home, they're doing online learning, whether it's your sales, for you who are working at home, you're working remotely. And the only reason you can do that because there are alternatives that are available to you. I mean, the platform we're using now, Zoom, between January and now, Zoom's share price has gone up 20%. Okay, I mean, and then I know the conference call line that we normally use for that's a free conference call now. It is always breaking down. Why? Because there's so much more foot traffic on it now. So it tells you that the importance of having multiple alternatives for digital solutions, whether it's in sales, in learning, and customer service, you name it, it must have a digital element. I mean, all the messages and stuff like, okay, if you want to buy something, send me an SMS, then I'll get someone to send it to you. But you can do things a bit more efficiently, right? So it's not send me an SMS, then show me evidence that you paid it, and you send me a WhatsApp chat, and show me you've made the payment. You know, but you can actually streamline a lot of these things and show the business person, the person that's running that business, or even if it's you running that business, there are ways to do these things a lot more efficiently. Okay, then I think I'm speaking a little bit fast. Let me slow down. Data is gold. Information is platinum. What do I mean by that? Yes, it's important to have data, but data just tells you what something is. Information tells you how to use it. So right now, if you're a business owner, and I know because in the Career Hub, I know we have a mix of business owners and people who work for organizations. But whatever the case may be, whatever it is you're doing, you need to know who your people are. You need to know who your staff are. You need to know who your customers are. And when I say no, it's not just this is the person that bought from me. Get as much information as them, because it's in that intimacy. It's when you know your customers and your customers feel that they know you. That is that level of intimacy, just that, okay, I'm going to ride the tide with these guys. I'm going to build up a customer base with these guys. I'm going to do a lot more with people that I feel. So your customers want to make sure that, they want to feel like you know them. Information is platinum. People need to know how to do things. I mentioned earlier that there are going to be a lot of accidental entrepreneurs. And because they're not, in Nigeria, particularly in Nigeria, and I think in the UK as well, with more educational systems are more designed towards being employed by someone, not entrepreneurship. So when someone finds that all of a sudden they're now in the entrepreneurial world, they couldn't quite know what to do. So, but imagine if you had a solution now for people who are like, okay, you know what, you've been recently unemployed or what have you, or you're trying to make ends meet in other ways. Here's something you can do, and you can provide advice, meaningful, tangible advice that people can take onto. They will latch onto it, especially if your price point is not too high. So here's an opportunity for you to look at as well. And another thing, access to instant microcredit is going to be critical because of the crunch that's happening. Every other person needs just a little bit of money just to tide them over, either to tide them over to payday or to tide them over for whatever, gap it is they're facing right now. I know someone who just started off a microcredit business. Not necessarily a huge amount of capital, but just trying to, leverage it and see how they can build it. So you have the bigger boys who are doing things, whether it's the payday or pay later. Obviously, the banks are in this space. The likes of the fintechs like the Carbon and Nigos are in this space as well. But apart from those, sexy type things going on, they are day-to-day people. What someone was doing was basically going to the market, right? And those people that make, the ladies that make akara, and realize that, these people are paid the way things work in Nigeria, especially Nigerian market, is a daily pay, daily wage type thing. And so what he was doing was that he realized that, okay, for the average akara lady to make ends meet for the day, all the production, all the items she did for production, right? So he would basically give them, not cash, he wouldn't give cash, well, he'll give them the oil, he'll give them the beans, he'll give them those salts, all those things. He already prepackaged everything, right, at a cost. But at the end of the day, and the value, I think, was maybe like 5,000 naira. But at the end of the day, they needed to repay him 5,500 naira. That's 5,500. So anything he made above that was theirs to keep. What is that? That means he was getting 10% flat a day. And so he started this, and I can't even tell you how many millions he's making right now, but he started this a couple of, 2-3 years ago, and now he's just going to something else. And so we don't need to necessarily look at the akara seller, but those opportunities are coming up for microcredit. If it's a space you have the liver for, it's something else to look at. Then another thing is, if you're looking at liquid investments, if you're not necessarily business oriented, right? And you're saying, what, I have some level of cash on me. What do I do with it? Now will be a good time to look at stocks, okay? For the ones of the companies you believe will survive. Remember we said earlier, that the basics, food, shelter, and well, clothing, and to some very small extent education, those are areas where are constant case, if I can use that term, that people will always eat. People will always need somewhere to live. So are there opportunities for you are there stocks you've been interested in that you haven't been able to buy, that the share prices have now reduced? Is it something you want to look at if you have the liver for that space? Again, I keep saying, if you're not risk averse, because stocks are stocks, they can go up, they can go down. But I do know a few people who are taking positions. And if you have access to buying stocks offshore, there are many applications that allow you to do that now. Now, personally, I'm not using one, but I do know of one that a few people have used and they say they're fine with it. So I can share those details. Maybe when we start the Q&A, I can share a bit more details and see what the person has done. So rather than buying thousands of dollars or maybe like Amazon or Google, it allows you to pay, it basically clubs investments, right? So maybe you're investing $100 or $200 or what have you into that share. So it's something that's going on right now. Now, we all know that local currency interest rates have reduced. The same way the lending rates have reduced, the returns on investments has also reduced. So it's not really attractive. Someone's going to be paying you 1% on a fixed investment. You're just thinking, really, is it worth it? You're just not keeping the money under your blanket. That's the truth. If you have FX, Euro bonds, I believe, are comparatively attractive right now. It's one of the few areas where you're getting double-digit yields, and there are some institutions who let you come in for as low about 200K because they're clubbing it, right? So typically you need to come in around $250,000 thereabout, but they allow you, to come about $20,000, sorry, about 20K. But the timing is also something else. So when you're locked into a Eurobond, you're in it for at least a minimum of 2 years. So if you are okay having patient capital, meaning you're okay to lock some money down and wait for your returns, and that's fine. Although you will be paid, the way some of them work is that you will be getting your yields like 6 monthly for those 2 years, right? But it's just something for you to pay attention to. And then what I'm also seeing is that there's a lot of people looking more at money market funds, right? Because anything beyond that 2% or 1% you're getting from your bank on fixed deposit is a lot more interesting. So there are many money market funds that are going on right now. There's also a lot happening in the, when I talked earlier, let me go back to this, when we talked about instant microcredit, there's a lot happening in the crowdfunding space, especially for agriculture. So a lot of people are coming up with crowdfunding solutions for agriculture. So you have the Crowdivest, you have Pork Money, you have a few things in rice. So there are many, many things going on. My only advice for that area, if you're going in that direction, was to be, number one, make sure you have some form of leverage with the principals, because usually all these things are done digitally, right? So you can't really hold anyone, as it were. So anything you're investing, you need to make sure that at a minimum, your principal is guaranteed. You can't guarantee returns, right? I mean, it's a risk that you're taking, but at a minimum, your principal has to be guaranteed. Okay, so at least you're not losing your initial investment. Okay. Then if you're looking at illiquid investments, there's going to be a lot of distress sales of land, of property, because people just need to free up cash. And the person who has property but needs actual cash flow for the business is going to want to free up that cash flow, right? So there's a lot of cash flow there's a lot of distress sales that will happen. I'm seeing some happen already. I know someone who bought some property in Lekki just last week. It was a distress sale, so something that would have cost, I think, maybe about 50 odd million, who's bought it at 35. Now, these things are not necessarily open to the public like that. They tend to be few and far between. But what you need to do is, if you work in a bank, if you're close to a bank, find out from the bankers, which of their customers are having issues with loan repayment, right? And see if it's something that you would be interested in, if they have assets that they want to offload. Is something worth exploring. But one thing is don't rush to buy, because if the fundamentals aren't right, so there's no point just buying a property that's going to be a problem to you later on. Okay, so if there's no sale or if there are issues in it, so you shouldn't just buy something just because it seems to be a good deal because it's cheap, right? And another opportunity that's coming up is buying into businesses that have liquidity issues. So again, because businesses need to survive, right? So you could see that people are thinking, you know what, you can come in, get 15%, 20% of my business for X amount. But one thing I always say, please, please, please don't invest in anything you don't understand, right? No matter what the returns seem to sound like or whatever it is they're promising, don't invest in anything you don't understand, because you won't know when things are going wrong, and you won't know how quickly you should get out of it. Okay, we're 30 minutes now. Okay, now we're not all business owners. A few of us work with people. So how do we work in this area? Now, this is what came to me. So what he talked about, and he said the king talked with them and no one impressed him as much as Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And here's the thing that I found interesting, that the king found them 10 times more capable than any of the magicians and enchanters in his entire kingdom, which means at this point in time, there's going to be a lot more demand for highly skilled individuals. Remember we said earlier that it's now the season of lean and mean, right? So people are going to want to keep as few people as possible, but as capable people as possible. You know, I mean, the average conversation that the business owner is thinking, okay, I have maybe 5 staff, I have 15 staff, I have 20 staff. If I have half of those, but who know exactly what to do, I'm fine. Right? So it's now, how do you make sure you are part of those, that is, if you're an employee category, how you are now part of those who are going to be in that I need this person category, right? So if anything, more than ever, now is the period to improve yourself. So if you're on lockdown, if you're at home, if you're remote working, whatever it is you're doing, now is the time to improve yourself, okay? Now is the time to take it seriously and say, okay, you know, this area I'm in, and we're all in different areas. What is the next stage? What is it that I can do to improve myself in this area? Is it, I understand there are many online courses, and I said, you know, I can't talk about anything that I haven't actually tried myself. So I've gone online, I've checked Udemy, I've checked Coursera, and they seem to have quite a few interesting things, you know, there at reasonable prices. So it might be worth looking at, and I believe some of them have certifications as well, you know. So this period is, when I say period, I don't mean necessarily those in Lagos State who are physically locked down. Wherever it is you are, I'm talking about this general season is a period to just, not just to say, let me just be doing my work, but actively engage in improving yourself professionally. It's important. And it's also important for us to develop skill sets that can cut across any industry. So it doesn't matter if today you're in oil and gas, tomorrow you can be in FMCG. It doesn't matter if you're in FMCG, tomorrow you can be in another, you can work with a fintech, you know. So what type of skill sets do you need to develop now that can cut across industries and sectors? So now is not necessarily, you can't, it's good to be a sector specialist, but if you're going to be a sector specialist, that means you need to make sure that that sector is actually growing and not reducing, right? It needs to be one of the growth areas. And if it's not, you need to see how you can adjust, you know, the skill set you have to be transferable in other sectors. And then what I'm also seeing is that a lot of small business owners, again, we were a mixed multitude here, so we have a mixture of employees and business owners. Small business owners will probably say that they start augmenting their income by freelancing as well. So remember, we talked about accidental entrepreneurs. So even if you're already running the business and you're thinking, well, I don't need any of these organizational skills because I work for myself, are there things you can do that can help you can help augment your income by providing specialist services, you know, outside of your normal line of business? So if I'm selling jewelry, but I happen to understand business planning, can I do that? You understand? So it's important to be able to be as flexible. This season, it requires for flexibility. You need to be very, very flexible and very agile, okay? And some of the 7 skills, I just talk very quickly about 7 skills I think we need to remain adaptive, right? Number 1 is emotional intelligence, is very important. Interpersonal skills, creative thinking, analytical thinking, leadership skills, active learning, change management. Why did I pick this? I have different conversations with different business owners, different sectors, the futurists, if I can use that term, who are saying, this is what banking will be like tomorrow. This is what the financial sector will be like tomorrow. This is what the economy will be like tomorrow. And these guys, this particular skill sets kept coming up across areas, different areas, and it wasn't necessarily sector specific. It's saying this person has this capacity, and these capacities cut across different areas. So yes, there may be some specialization in different areas, but it's important to have the basics across these areas. I think I will pause a little bit here because I went into a bit more detail as to what those skill sets are and what they cover. But I want, first of all, to find out if we're all okay with where I am right now, with what I've shared so far before we go into detail on that, or do we even need to go into detail on that? Should we just stop, pause right now and discuss the first half in terms of the opportunities that we can talk about the second half later? I mean, what are your thoughts? Does anyone have any comment? if I've just I've been mindful of time. So if I've gone through some things very fast and you'd like me to go back on it, I'm happy to do that. Okay, so Ada says we can continue. So far, so good. We can continue. I should go back. Okay.
Continue, and then we'll drop our questions in the comment section.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'll go. Okay. So I'll continue. Let me go back to sharing my screen. I don't know how this came here. Okay. So let me go back and continue. Okay, so emotional intelligence, it's a bit wordy here, but just trying to make it as practical as possible. And essentially, it's just being able to be aware of, control, express and manage your emotions, and handle interpersonal relationships properly and empathetically. So basically, don't carry your baggage with you. There's some people, when you get into the office, they've had a bad day and they take that out on people, right? So things like that. So it's basically recognizing and managing your emotions. So you could know that, what, maybe somebody annoyed me on the road or whatever it is. I'm having a bad day. I'm not in the mood for this right now. But consciously being conscious enough to know that this is what I'm going through. This is what I feel, and being deliberate about not taking it out on others. And also recognizing the emotions of other people. Why are people reacting the way they are reacting? You're speaking to someone, it could be one of your colleagues, and the person just lashes out. You're thinking, what's wrong with this person? No, take a step again, pay attention. Why is this person reacting? Why is this person responding the way he or she's responding? And so there's an exercise that the Hay group did, and therefore, and I'm sure the HR guys on the call are probably more experts at this, but this is from what I've experienced in terms of leadership and management. And it's saying that, look, the main 4 fundamentals you need to look at in terms of emotional intelligence, number 1 is self-awareness. Understanding yourself. It's important to understand yourself. Understand when you're happy, understand when you're sad. We're emotional we're emotional beings. We have emotions, all right? So we can't say because we're an organization, we can, just shut it out. How aware are you of your emotions, and then how can you accurately assess your own emotions and how others respond to you? Because sometimes you need to ask yourself, if you keep getting the same response from people, the same type of response, is it me? Is it something about the way I'm responding? Is it something about the way I'm reacting? There's something that I'm doing. So because a lot of us are very busy, we don't really take time to reflect and ask ourselves, what, why do I keep getting the same type of reaction from people? Is there something I'm saying, or is it the way I'm saying it? Right? Then self-management, how do you control your own emotions? Do you react or do you respond? They're 2 very different things. So reaction is like, there's this test that they do in the hospital, right? When the doctors are checking your mobility and they tap your knee and your knee just, that's what they call the knee-jerk reaction. Do we do a knee-jerk reaction when something happens? I get an email and I fire back immediately, like, how dare they? Who did it? Do we just react? Do we have situations where we just react? We respond. We respond. Please, can I request that we mute our mics, please? Do we react or do we respond? Right? Are we socially aware? Are you aware of your organization? Do you just walk into the office, wherever it is you work, and head straight to your desk and that's it, and you have blinkers on, you're not looking to the left or to the right, like, let me just come and do my job? Are you aware of, if I can use the word, the pulse of your organization? Are you aware of what's going on? Because sometimes perhaps the response you get is because you are out of sync with the pulse of your organization. Right? Then are you focused on the empathy of your social awareness? Do you feel the pulse of your team? If you're a team lead or if you work with a team, do you feel the pulse of your team? Do you get a sense of what's going on around you? And then relationship managers, understanding that this is not just if you're a client manager, you have to manage the relationships around you. So how do you develop others? If you're a leader, how do you serve as an inspiring leader? Right? Are you the person? And leadership, I don't necessarily mean the most senior people in the hierarchy, senior person in the hierarchy within an organization, but in whatever area it is you are a leader. So how do you respond? How do you manage people? Are you the go-to person? for certain areas? Are you the please avoid person? You know, there's some people that you just think to yourself, the major mistake you can make is to ask them, how was your day? And then your own day is downhill from then on. So how do you manage people? And also, how do you manage conflict? Because conflict will happen in your organization, in your business, conflict will happen. How do you understand there's a difference between personality clashes, which will happen, and things that, you know, are actually going to impact your business? It's not every issue that needs to be an issue. It's not everything that needs to be discussed in detail. Some things just tell people, you know, you two adults, deal with it, move on. Other things may require a bit more attention in terms of addressing. So emotional intelligence is important, particularly in these seasons, right, where we're going to be doing a lot more remote working. We're going to be dealing with people you may not necessarily see face to face. So there's a lot that's going to be important in terms of your tone, the manner in which you speak, right? Even in the way you type, you know, some people don't realize that, like someone said, when they're typing in caps, it's as though you're shouting. You know, people don't necessarily realize that, just thinking I'm typing in caps. No, it could be offensive to someone else. You know, so those little details. So are we reacting or responding? Are we aware of ourselves? Do you reflect every day as, okay, I didn't quite handle that well, or maybe I could have done a little bit better, or, you know, actually see how people are responding to you, how people respond when you bring up a topic, how people respond when you bring up a suggestion. Are you aware of that? Okay, so that's the emotional intelligence part. I'm spending a bit of time on this one because this is really, really important in these times. This is personal skills. Okay, and now, I mean, this is again for the hey guys, what they said, and I agree, is that it's a vital skill during this, what we're calling the fourth industrial revolution. That's a tech revolution, because it's all about tech in this season, right? And I'm saying also, this is not, when I say season, I'm not talking about Corona at all. I'm just talking about the industry, the world generally. And so the ability to exchange information and meaning between people is one thing to speak, right? Communication is not just talking. It's one thing to speak, it's another thing for the person to receive what it is you're saying. Are they getting the message? Are you, because you're not communicating until the person has received what it is you've sent out in the manner in which you sent it out, with the intention that you sent it out. Right, so understanding those interpersonal skills, right? So how do you communicate effectively with other people? You may have an idea in your head, and because you don't explain why, and I'll give you an example. So there's a time we were going through this, the bank was going through a merger with another institution, right? And we needed to combine teams. But at the same time, what I didn't realize was that there were also some conversations going on about downsizing. So because of some of the team members from the other organization were meant to join mine, and so I just, out of pure, you know, no hidden agenda, just ask, oh, can they send me their CVs? Because what, in my mind, what I wanted to do was to see how best to match them. Now, because there's a downsizing going on, which I hadn't paid attention to, or which I should have paid more attention to, so they thought that, okay, these CVs have been sent to HR so that they can be fired. Right? So it wasn't until someone else called me to say, why are you asking for this? Because I just requested, I made a request, but I didn't explain why. Oftentimes we feel we don't necessarily need to explain why, right? Why we're doing something. I say, I need this because, I need you to do this because, right? So the other person understands what they need to do, how they need to respond to you. Now, human beings are human beings. People can still choose not to, and there's still some human beings who are just badly behaved, and that's fine. That's reality. But at least make sure you're doing your own part to manage your team, manage yourself, manage your interpersonal skills, whether it's your customers, whether it's your bosses, whether it's your juniors. This is critical, because people management is critical. The more we have physical distance amongst us, those who are able to keep that connection, that human connection, are going to be more and more critical at this age, okay? Then creative thinking, I can't overemphasize this. So everyone talks about machine learning, right? AI, and I love machine learning. I use it quite a bit, right? But the truth is that humans have a unique capacity to look at things from several different angles and bring resolutions in an unexpected way, right? So you can't get rid of human beings, much as, yes, technology is important and is, you know, it's going to take over many jobs and what have you, yes. But as a human being, you have the capacity to imagine. A computer cannot do that. You have the capacity to create a vision for something and devise new ways of doing things. And that's going to be an asset to any organization, because imagine you're talking to your boss who is every night is thinking, how do I make ends meet, for crying out loud? I have to pay the bills for these people. And you say, guy, look, why don't we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things a little bit differently? Or here's an opportunity. Or let's try this. It just shows that you are thinking creatively. Now, that capacity to think, right, in the Nigerian environment, it is special. I'm sure anyone who who has employed anyone before will realize that very few people actually want to think. And so by the time you now add creativity to it, you will be gold. You will be platinum, because they're like, this person can actually help us think through things and think a way out of a problem, and not just, oh, there's a problem, fold their hands and look, which is what happens 99% of the time. There are people's solutions just to say, I've told my boss there's a problem. End of discussion. What did you do about it? Oh, was I supposed to do something about it? So that ability to think and then think creatively. And then the next thing is thinking analytically, to take a problem and dissect it, right? And take it out, take something that's seemingly complex and just break it down and say piece by piece, how does this work? Let's demystify this thing. What exactly is the problem? No matter how big a problem is, right? Or it appears to be, there's always a root cause. Once you can address that root cause, then you've addressed the issue itself. Right? Oftentimes what we do is that we address the symptoms, and because we're addressing symptoms, we're constantly firefighting to the root cause, like, okay, what exactly is the real problem here? And how do we address that real problem? And they now suggest ways to solve those problems, right? Using reason and logic. There's no one very few people will say, will ignore a solution that's going to solve their problem. Very few people will do that. So the fact that you have the capacity to think analytically is a skill set we must develop, we must acquire. Critical thinking, that ability to think creatively and analytically is important. Then leadership skills, as I said earlier, leadership is not restricted to level. It's not I am this level or that, and it's required at every level, because collaboration is going to happen at every single level. Okay, so it's not just about at board level, exec level, team lead level. Collaboration is required across board to make things run. Because imagine everyone's running lean and mean, right? So there aren't going to be that many people either within the team, within the organization, or across businesses. So to get things going, you have to be the type of person that knows how to get things done. And what is leadership? It's just influencing people, understanding how to influence people positively, not manipulate, but influence. Okay, so both within and outside of your organization. Then active learning. Now is the time to make sure you're constantly learning. Whatever it is you knew yesterday doesn't mean it can't help you tomorrow. That's the truth. It may act as a guide, right? But you need to ask, how do I apply yesterday's knowledge or today's knowledge to tomorrow's environment, right? And so in the work context, it's not just, oh, I read a book, but how do you now apply this thing you're reading to your current environment and take a step back? Again, we're children of God, and ask God, okay, this thing, what does the future look like, and how do I apply this thing to the future? Okay, so that's what I would say on active learning. And then finally, on change management, the only thing that's constant in life is change. We had a session in January. Here we are 90 days. Today is actually day 90. So here we are 90 days later. And no, tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow that's day 90, yeah. And anyway, here we are later on, and so much has changed. The other day I was talking to someone, I can't remember who it was, and I said, you know what? I think it was in the group chat, and I said, this is actually, we're not even down, we haven't done the first 100 days of 2020. And so much has happened. So it's clear that the only thing that's constant in life is change. So how do you manage change? Are you a panic-driven person? Are you a fearful person? And what is when there's a crisis, it shows who you are. So I'll give an example, and permit me to use this example. So this whole COVID scenario, right? I was talking to one of the team leads. We were having different conversations before we activated our remote working and flexi working and plans. And there's a particular team lead that rushed into the office to tell me that, there's a panic that, everybody needs to get out. I said, what does everybody need to get out? That, apparently, she says that this person said that there was someone who had come into the building the week before, who apparently had come in from outside the country and, should not have come in. And I said, okay, so the person came in because the policy was that, if you traveled, stay away, stay home, self-isolate for 2 weeks and what have you. But this person came in for whatever reason. But immediately that same day, the person was asked to go home. So the person came into the office just briefly. And I said, so why is that a problem? And I said, that somebody else on a different floor, was coughing and had a headache. I said, okay, so because somebody came in, somebody was coughing and had a headache. So, help me link the two. Did something happen? Were they in contact? What exactly? I said, no, but you don't know what's happened, so we need to empty the building. He said, we're not going to do that. That doesn't make any sense. That, but you are clearly, this person was clearly very panicked. I said, you know what, you are clearly very panicked. I don't want to be around here. So please, go home. I won't keep you in the office. Go home. But what does that tell me? That told me that, okay, in a crisis, people respond very differently. In a crisis, people react very differently to information, to whatever is going on around them. And as a leader, you ask yourself, in a crisis, who can I hold on to? Who is going to be the person that's going to have a sound head that can actually think through a crisis with me? Not the person you need to calm down, because nobody at this, most crisis situations, people don't really know what to do at that point in time. So, you need clear-headed people. So when you're responding as a clear-headed person who understands, that panic is not necessarily the response to everything, then you actually stand yourself out. Just the very simple act of being calm, right, will stand you out. So how do you manage change in your workplace? And then how do you help others manage change? Why I asked that person to go was, as in to go home that day, was if I had let my view is if I let that person stay in the office 1 minute longer, the amount of panic that person would have generated would have been unbelievable. So you're asking yourself that, okay, how do you actually help? And we're human beings. I'm not saying the person didn't have a right to be worried, no. But then how do you help others manage that change? Are there better ways of saying, you know what, even if we did need to empty the building, right, how best do we do it without causing unnecessary panic? So these are just the practical, I'm just trying to make this session as practical as possible and say, look, these are the 7 skill sets that we've seen that have been identified again. So it's not just Rolaya talking. Like I said, this was identified by the Hay Group and a number of guys. And that if these are the skill sets that we require across different sectors, across different industries, then we will do well. We will do well to invest time and energy in applying ourselves to understanding and acquiring and developing and honing these skills. So I think I will pause now. Yeah. I will pause now. So if you have any questions. We're all super fine. We all heard what we needed. No questions whatsoever.
I don't have a question. I think mine is more about, how to what market to invest in. Because I know that cash is currently king right now. So thankfully, I think I'm liquid. So I'm just what to invest in. And I heard you talk about Eurobonds.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go back. So the markets that are interesting right now, if we're to look at, let's go. So there are many options. Now, for those who are, it depends on how high, again, your level of risk, how much risk you're willing to take and you're happy to take. So if you are not too risk averse, then you can invest in, for narrow investments now, definitely will have to be money market, because that's the only thing that's going on right now that makes any kind of sense in terms of the formal market. In terms of the informal market, I mentioned earlier that there are smaller entities, particularly the fintech space, who are providing different options. So I mentioned them, the Piggyvest, you have Crowdfunding, Pork Money, and a few of these guys, Crowdy, who are offering anywhere from 15 to 20% returns on your investment from a period from over, let's say, 6 months to a year. If you still want to go with the financial institution, there are not that many exciting options, as I said, outside of fixed deposits. The Eurobond is there. The Eurobond typically, so they're actually, I forgot to mention this. So they're actually also dollar-based investments, right? But the yield is so low. I mean, I'm talking like 2-3%, right? 2-4%. But then if you're holding a dollar-based investment, then what you're doing is more trying to secure a store of value than actually get returns because of the devaluation. So by that I mean, so if you invested, let's say, for the sake of argument, $1,000, right? $1,000 at 5%. So at the end of the year, you have, your $1,005, but it would have cost you at the beginning of the year maybe 350,000 naira. But by the end of the year, that could be anywhere to maybe 400,000 naira. So you've effectively made 50,000 naira. So it all depends. It's not really hard and fast. It all depends. And then if you have fairly deep pockets, then you're looking at more of the euro bonds. But as I said, there's also a time element to the euro bonds. So euro bonds, you need to lock the money down for a couple of years thereabouts. You'll be getting your yield. What they call it, you'll be getting some amount on the every 6 months, but that money is going to be on lockdown for at least 2 years, and you're talking about at least about $20,000. So in terms of what's happening, what's interesting, to be very frank, in the liquid market and the formal market, nothing is really interesting per se, and that's why what a lot of people are doing is just moving their money to FX. Well, prior to now anyway, I've been moving their money to FX, so more of as a store of value than as a way to actually grow the business, rather to grow their money. Now, CBN has talked about putting some stimulants in place. Well, this was prior to COVID, so then there was expectation that the interest rates the treasury bill rates may go up again. But with all that's going on, it's not likely that that's going to happen. So we're going to see very low yields for the better part of 2020. So I don't know if that answers your question, but unfortunately, it's not going to be. There's no one place where you can say put your money and you're going to get plenty returns right now. We're not in that kind of economy. Remember I said that we're going into a global recession, so it's not the typical ways of getting returns of investments are not going to look very exciting. I don't know if that answers your question. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, it wasn't very exciting. Okay, someone wants me to talk about crowd marketing. Okay, so what I was talking about was crowdfunding. So then, what a few businesses have realized. Sorry, was someone speaking?
Sorry, I had actually unmuted. I didn't know that. I was just moving. I wanted to ask a question. Sorry.
Okay. So do you wanna? Okay, let me respond to the person that was asking about the crowdfunding. Then I can answer your question. All right. Okay. So the person was asking how crowdfunding works for micro credits, crowd market. I didn't quite get that, but microcredit businesses. Okay. So crowd marketing. So it's basically I have a business idea, right? And I'm not going to go to a bank because I'm a startup, or I don't have the 1,000,001 things that bankers ask for. But I have a valid business idea that's going to generate income. So what I say is, rather than try and do everything myself or beg friends and family alone, and I'll group people together and say, I'm going to set up like a business, right? And everybody has an opportunity to buy a portion of that business, to get a portion of the returns of that business. So let's say my business is, for the sake of argument, since we're talking about crowdfunding, I have a farm, for example, right? And in that farm, I expect to get a yield of, it's going to cost me maybe like 1 million naira to get my produce, pay the staff, do whatever needs to be done. But I expect a yield of 100,000 naira at the end of the year, right? So that's 10%. I'm thinking each person, I'm going to give you a portion of my land, right? And so if you invest I need 10 people to invest 100,000 naira each, or 20 people to invest 50,000 naira each, so basically getting a whole bunch of people to come together, and then I'll give you the returns based on the amount you've invested. All right. So because I expect to get 100,000 naira at the end of the year, based on the proportion you invested, you will get your own share of that 100,000 at the end of the year. However, as I said earlier, because things happen and life happens, right? If you're going to go into that, and there are some interesting crowdfunding opportunities out there, but if you're going to go into that as an investor, my recommendation would be, as I said, make sure that your principal is covered. You can't guarantee interest because that's a risk you're taking as an investor, but at a minimum, there should be some guarantee, right? Some insurance for your principal. Okay. So Peju KA wanted to ask a question. Then I can respond to the other page that's asking a question here.
Yeah. Thanks, Rolaya. Thanks for sharing. So my question is on the, because I've struggled with this with some of my members, and it just seems to me like, and this is about the skills that are needed, and I think by 2022, if people don't have these skills, then they probably struggle even more, according to some reports. So, but it's on creative thinking, and I want to put analytical thinking in that bucket as well. Yeah. It almost seems like it's either nature and nurture. So some people, well, I don't know whether it's, so I don't know whether you have any suggestions or advice on how to build these skills, or even just build on it if you have you know, it at all. Because it almost seems like some people are just naturally creative, and you know, probably by virtue of some others' background, or maybe educational background, they're more analytical, or because they have a certain sort of course or field of, I mean, I don't know. I mean, just because of their background, sometimes you find them more analytical than others, and some also more creative. So is there sort of like any advice or suggestions on how people can become more creative and more analytical?
Okay, so, and I hear what you're saying, that some people just seem to get it, and you know, each time you ask them a question, it's like a light bulb goes up in their head and they have the answer immediately. So nature and nurture, for some people is nature, for the rest of the world is nurture. And the good thing is that I think that the opportunities to learn this thing, as essentially, even all these things we've talked about creative thinking, analytical thinking, there's basically what a principle that it's called design thinking. Okay, essentially what they call it now is design thinking. That's the best way I can put it. And there are actually many courses on that. And remember I mentioned earlier on Udemy and Coursera. And so I actually noticed that there was some design thinking. Now, how good they are, I don't know. I haven't taken those courses on those particular platforms, but I have read a few books on, I've had a few sessions on design thinking. And what it does basically, that it teaches you how to take things, how to break things down to first principles. Okay, how to look at a problem and say, as I said earlier, what exactly is the root cause? Oftentimes we deal with what we see, but how do you now go deeper and then break it down, you know, uncouple it, you know, how do you decouple a problem and then now start piecing it back together in a way that makes it better than it was before. So they're actually training programs on design thinking, and I strongly recommend that everyone at least has some form of knowledge around that, because it, as you said, it's a critical thing because it's gone are the days where a problem comes in a particular way, right? There's sometimes like, okay, this is a payroll problem, this is, you know, a performance problem. Now the problem just comes and you're like, okay, so how do I respond to this thing? It has a bit of payroll, it has a bit of tax, it has a bit of everything. So you have to be able to break it down to its core elements. And so design thinking, I think, would be the best. Well, I would suggest that anyway. I don't know if anyone else has any other suggestions, but that is what I have found has actually been able to address that gap, at least for me anyway.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, someone just sent something, Udemy course on creativity and innovation for business. So I don't know if everyone can see it, but I think that would help. So there are courses on, as it says, look, people have realized that there's a problem, right? And so they've actually put these things in place. Remember I said digital is what? Digital is gold, but rather data is gold, but information is platinum. Everyone's asking for this type of information. And as you're looking for courses, I think you should also ask yourself, you should be amazed at what you know. What type of courses can you put on for yourself? How do you also help prepare other people? Because between, I mean, everybody I see here, you all have different levels of experience, and you'll be shocked at how much you actually know that the average person does not know, especially someone who hasn't done what you've done. You know, so how do you do that? Exactly, it's discounted. I checked Udemy, and the average cost there is like what, $10. And I mean, so it will be criminal not to at least try, not to invest some time in this, because it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, right? So it's worth checking that out. I think I'm just going through the questions. So someone's asking, what's my opinion on mutual funds? And is it a good time to buy USD or get rid of what you have, considering the US economy is also struggling? Now, if you're in Nigeria, is this a time to get rid of your dollars? The simple answer is no. hold on to it, it's going to cost you a lot more to buy it later on, right? So unless what you're doing is trading, right? So meaning you are taking the margin and you are arbitraging. So I decide that, okay, for example, now if I buy $10,000, or let's say I bought $10,000 at 360, right? And I'm now going to sell it at 400. So I made 40K, right? So I made 400,000 naira, right? So is my math correct? Yeah. So if I made that money, I now reinvest that money, I go and buy another $10,000 and, sell again. But the truth is you can't necessarily determine the direction the market is going to go. So if you're in Nigeria, what you're really doing is you're holding it more as a store of value, because it's going to cost you a lot more later on to purchase the same level of FX. It's going to take you more naira. So you're going to have to send more naira to buy the same amount of FX, right? So is this a good time to buy FX? The question is, what do you want to buy it for, right? So if you have like payment of some obligations, then yeah, I mean, if you have to do that, you have to do that. Right now, everyone's in panic mode right now, and there isn't that much liquidity. And also, the CBN isn't selling to BDCs right now. That's the Bureau de Change. So, which means that FX supply is shrinking, right? It's really constrained right now. And obviously, when the supply of anything is constrained, the price goes higher. So now would not be, personally, I would not suggest you buy FX right now unless you absolutely have to, because you'll be paying a very high premium at this point in time. Now, the next question is, when should I buy? I think things need to cool down a little bit. An indicator for me would be when CBN starts selling FX to BDCs again. That would be an indicator that, okay, the market is softening a little bit. But right now, unless you absolutely have to, I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you buy FX unless you absolutely have to. The US economy is also struggling. Every economy is struggling. Okay, so the US economy is struggling, the English economy is struggling. And England is going to struggle even more, because remember now, prior to COVID, they're going through Brexit, right? So there's still a lot that's going on. There's still a lot that's going to happen. And in the UK market, I remember UK was for a long time, or England, or London specifically, was like the hub for Europe. So there are many things that are going to happen. So unless you are trading on a global scale, meaning you're a portfolio investor and you have visibility across markets, and some people do. So if you do, then that's fine. So which means, but what that means, I need to keep your eye on the ball, right? So the guys who are doing the FX trades, and there are people who are making a killing, by the way. There are people who are making quite a bit of money taking positions, FX positions. But for you to make a kill, your eye must be on the ball, right? And you're monitoring that thing seriously. So you have your Bloomberg screen, your Bloomberg screen is on. So you're monitoring the dollar market, you're monitoring the euro market, the GBP market, and you're taking positions. So if you have that kind of access, then by all means, do it. But if you have not done it before, now is not the time to start trying. Okay. Jumoke says everyone should skill up completely globally. Yes, cybersecurity is another area to focus. Absolutely. So I think I've shared this before. So what I do, part of the areas under my responsibility in the bank is the wholesale channels, electronic channels. And so what you see is that the quality of cyber crimes that we're seeing, it is so sophisticated. So the same way you and I will wake up and go to work, that's their job, that's what they do for a living. It is very, very sophisticated, very, very sophisticated, very well done. And if I were to look at the global economy, billions are being lost to cyber crime currently. Now, if you have cybersecurity skills, then yes, it's another, but then that is sort of like niche specific. So it depends on what area you're in. And so you need to demonstrate some level of expertise in that area. So you must be digitally inclined in the first place to even understand how cybersecurity can help. But should you not be, then I think there are other opportunities you should explore. Okay, mutual funds in Nigeria. Yes, there are a few. So I know there are quite a few there. There's AXA Mansa, there's United Capital, there's Nambic, there are a few mutual funds in Nigeria. But as I said, the returns are not exciting in any market right now. It's more about getting better returns, not necessarily great returns. All right, so you'll make a bit of money or more. It's more about not losing money than really making money, if you get what I'm saying. So you can have, there are quite a few mutual funds. I've invested in mutual funds. And what the mutual funds does. So just for the sake, let me not assume everybody knows. So mutual funds is, rather than buying stocks in a particular business or in a particular area, it takes like a pool right, is like a mix of different shares, different stocks. Some of it is land, some of it is equity, some of it is debt, depending on the type of mutual fund and what it is that they are investing in, type of businesses they're investing in. And so what you're getting is like a blended return. So rather than just maybe saying buying shares in Guinness alone, there could be a bit of Guinness, a bit of Nestle, a bit of, depending on the type of fund it is. And so that's meant to reduce the risk somewhat because your risks are diversified, your portfolio is diversified. So that makes it a bit more stable than just investing in a company directly where the shares could go up and down. So there are mutual funds that are available and you can invest in them. But as I said, you don't expect fantastic returns. It's just that it will be better than putting your money in the bank for fixed deposits. But it's not going to be hugely fantastic. I know, but check out the two that I know. So yes, FCMB has a mutual fund. I can say that. Then there's AXA Mansard and there's United Capital. So there are quite a few. Okay, someone says SFS presently. Okay, so SFS Capital presently have returns of 10.63. So there you go. So someone has mentioned someone that has returns of 10.63% per annum. And the question is, okay, so how long do you need to lock your money down for? Are there any breakage fees? So all those things, just look at the fine print, look at the detail. And so right now, does it make sense to just keep your money in fixed deposit? The answer is no. You need to find something more interesting to do with your money, unless all you just want is to make sure you have access to liquidity when you need it. Okay, and I would also suggest have a blend. Have a blend in Naira, have a blend in FX. When the market softens a bit, if you haven't made any FX purchases before in terms of buying to hold, not necessarily buying to sell, I would suggest you do that because it's just going to be a lot more expensive for you to buy later on, right? So you definitely need to do a bit of both. I hope that answers your question, Peju. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I just saw Tilda. Tilda has a question.
Hi, I think my question was in line with Peju's question and you've answered it, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So I think the major worry point that I see for people is, what do I do with my money? How do I invest my money? And so as I said, right now, see the formal sector, if you're going to put your money in the formal sector, understand that you are just putting it there so you just want to put your money under your pillow. Okay, I'm just being very, very blunt. You're not going to get exciting returns. When I say formal sector, in terms of just putting your money in, whether it's a fixed deposit or what have you, if you're looking for any major returns, and by major I'm saying double digits in the 15 and above range, then you're going to be looking at things that are a little bit more unorthodox. Okay, so things a bit more unorthodox, whether it's in the crowdfunding area, whether it's in the Eurobond area, whether it's investing in a business area. There's some things I've been sharing, but there are quite a few. As I said, with every crisis, opportunities come up, right? So a lot is happening in the fintech space as well. Many people are coming up with solutions to try and solve problems, and a lot of these guys also require funding. But the thing is, as I said, with any opportunity, there's a plus, there's an upside, there's a downside. There's always a potential downside. So it depends on how risk averse you are and how patient your capital is. And by that I mean how much money you can set aside for a particular period. My suggestion would be to look at this and say, you know what, I have a mix, right? So I have my patient capital, some money I can set aside for, and I can put in an investment, and I know for the next 12 to 18 months, I'm not going to look in that direction. So it's just quietly bringing me some returns. Then I can have the ones that I have my easy access to, so that should anything happen in a crunch, I can raise, I can get access to my money, however much it is that I need, depending on what your spending cycle is and your type of bills that you pay. Then I have my long-term one. I need to have some FX available to me as well, because number one, it's going to be a better store of value than Naira for the foreseeable future, because the formal devaluation, the CBN has effectively devalued, they just didn't say anything. Right, so because by the time you're moving from 366, there about 360 to 380 in the INA window, it affects everything else. And so, even the rates, the 306, which was always very artificial and nobody access, well, when I say nobody, very few people could access anyway, even that has been increased. So they've effectively sort of done that, they just haven't made too much noise about it. And so what that means is that as more funds on our reserves, which is going to happen for the foreseeable future until maybe China bounces back, until Russia bounces back. It's not going to grow significantly anytime soon. But as having said that, again, this is not about doom and gloom, the opportunities and everything. So you actually have more returns. So they've always been, when you look at the interest rates or the returns, the opportunities for returns, there's always been higher opportunities for returns in Naira than in FX. FX has always been more of a store of value. So the question now is, where do you put your Naira? Where do you send it to? What are the opportunities? And so that's why I spent some time looking at the pattern, saying we need to look at the new normal. What do we look at? What are we spending? What are the opportunities that are coming to us? Because different people could be. So there's not everything you need to jump on. But I say that, okay, does this thing have legs? Is it in the food sector? Is it in the education sector? Is it in the, when I say education, particularly online education, anything that has a digital element, pay some attention to it and do the analysis, right? So when say you're going to invest, also, there are many other things, many other factors that come into investing. There's the character of the, the principles of the business. There's so much more else. But even just keeping your eye out and knowing that it's not all doom and gloom, we shouldn't all just be worried about Corona. There are opportunities coming up. Look, there's so many of the billionaires we're talking about right now, right? A number of them, I'm saying international billionaires, a lot of them made their money during depressions, during recessions, because they saw an opportunity. And they said, okay, whilst everybody was still crying and, crying and weeping, they were taking advantage of those opportunities. So we need to also keep our eyes open for those things, right? So mutual funds, yes, in terms of store of value and getting few returns. Yes, keep your money in the bank, fixed deposits, so that at least that one isn't going anywhere. Be a little bit adventurous, invest in a few things. Whether it's, like I said, whether it's a crowd investing, whether it's putting your money in carbon, whatever it is. And okay, Tony just put something here. So asking God for ideas and solutions for this present season. Ideas that will not require much time, will bring a steady flow of income. Absolutely. And I'll refer you back to this this slide, as I said, this thing is important. See, wisdom dwells with prudence and find out knowledge of witty inventions. So the ideas I have may be different from the ideas you have. But I'm saying that, remember, life is spiritual, business is definitely spiritual, right? And so whatever it is you're putting your money into, you need to ask yourself, first of all, asking God, what is the solution? What are the ideas? What are the things that I am meant to do? There are certain things that maybe Peju is doing very well that Rola could never do. The other things that Ada could be excellent at that I could just totally flop at. And the other things that I could thrive at that, they wouldn't want to touch with a barge pole. So it's not about what anybody else is doing. So it's not for us to go and kneel down before God and say, Father Lord, we're asking for direction. We're asking for your help. You have said that wisdom dwells with prudence and that you find out the knowledge of witty inventions. Give me an idea from the throne room for this season. Give me an idea, a solution from the throne room for my generation. Give me an idea from the throne room. Because once it's coming from God, because he sees the end from the beginning, right? So we can posture and say all sorts of things here and have our eyes and ideas open, which was my goal for this session, for us to just open our minds, open our eyes. But the real answer, right, is going to come from the one who made us all. The real solution and where we should go, what we should do, is going to come from the one who made us all, because that's where, where tomorrow is for each of us is different, and how we now position and posture ourselves, whether it's in the career, whether it's in setting up a business, whether we're doing half and half, whether it's setting up a business while we're working on a career, which we should do, because remember we said going forward is going to be lean and mean, so you must always have alternative income, an alternative source of income. So it's really, at the end of the day, we can look at what we see. We see in part, we know in part, but it's God that knows everything. So we just need to position ourselves and posture ourselves. But my goal for this, and which if I achieve it and I fulfill the assignment, is for us to open our minds to know that there are actually opportunities right there, and God wants us to know that there are things we need to be paying attention to. He wants us to pay attention and just not be, not be consumed by, what's going on and all the noise around. There are opportunities that he's creating, and so we need to be aware of that and mindful of that, so that when the opportunity comes before us, we can take advantage of it as he would want us to. Because remember, I said there's a lot of wealth creation that's going to happen, right? And it will be very, very sad if we, his people, are left out because we're not paying attention. Okay, I don't know if I've